I'm going to start with the part of the purchase that haunts a lot of us. You see a cheap floor-standing speaker on sale, you think the price is a win, you bring it home, and then you spend the next few weeks wondering if you made a mistake because the music feels thin, the movies lack that rumble, and you keep hunting for that missing wow factor. That hesitation is real, especially when you're trying to upgrade a living room setup that already has a decent TV and maybe a subwoofer you've been meaning to replace. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So, let's talk about the Polk Audio Reserve R600 pair. These aren't the bargain bin models you might find at a discount retailer, but they also aren't the $2,000 plus high-end towers that sit on a separate shelf. They sit in a middle ground where a lot of us hope to find the sweet spot between price, performance, and aesthetics. The big question is, does that middle ground actually deliver a smarter buy, or does it just feel like a compromise that you'll end up living with? First off, the design. The R600s have a slim, modern cabinet that doesn't dominate a room the way some bulky floorstanders do. If you've got a contemporary living room with clean lines, they blend in without looking like an afterthought. That's a practical strength for anyone who cares about interior design as much as sound. The cabinet also incorporates a port that's claimed to produce effortless bass. In practice, that means you'll hear deeper lows than you might expect from speakers in this price range. When I set them up next to a modest 10-inch subwoofer in my home theater, the combined bass felt full enough to keep the rumble in action scenes without the sub doing all the work. You get a more cohesive soundstage and you can turn the sub's gain down a notch, which frees up power for mids and highs. The mid-range is where these speakers try to really shine. A specialized cone design supposedly increases stiffness, allowing detail to come through without the mids sounding harsh. When I played a mix of acoustic guitar, vocal tracks, and a brass ensemble, the guitars came across with a natural warmth, the vocals stayed present without sounding nasally, and the horns kept a pleasant brightness. For everyday listening streaming playlists, YouTube videos, or gaming, the R600s managed to keep the sound natural rather than overemphasized. If you're someone who values a balanced mid-range for dialogue in movies or voices in podcasts, that's a notable win. Now let's cover the practical downsides, because no product is flawless. The first thing I noticed is the low-frequency extension. While the port does help, the speakers still need help from a dedicated sub if you want that true cinematic punch. If your primary use is movie watching and you want deep, floor-shaking effects, you shouldn't expect the R600s alone to deliver that. Also, the tweeter is positioned fairly close to the mid-range cone, which can cause a subtle blending of the very high frequencies. In most music it's not a deal-breaker, but if you're an audiophile who craves the crisp, airy detail in a classic jazz record, you might feel a tiny smudge in the top end. That's a trade-off you need to weigh against the price. Speaking of price, the value proposition comes from the combination of its aesthetic integration and the amount of detail you actually hear for the money. Many buyers in this bracket end up picking speakers that look good but sound mediocre, or speakers that sound great but look like they belong in a garage. The R600s try to cover both. That's why they're a solid fit for a primary living room pair. You can place them on either side of a TV, get enough bass to keep music lively, enjoy clear mids for movies and shows, and still have a room that looks tidy. Who should buy these? If you're upgrading from a set of bookshelf speakers and you have a medium-sized room, say, 1,215 feet diagonal, the R600s give you a noticeable lift without breaking the bank. They're also a good match for someone who already owns a subwoofer and wants the floor-standing pair to handle mids and highs while the sub takes care of the low end. Gamers who like immersive audio will appreciate the clear directional cues, and anyone who streams a lot of dialogue-heavy content will notice the reduced fatigue during long binge-watch sessions. Who should skip them? If you have a very large open-plan space, the R600s may struggle to fill the room with enough power, and you'll likely need additional rear or height speakers for a full surround experience. Also, if you're a dedicated high-resolution audiophile who expects the absolute top-tier tweeter performance, you might feel the R600s are a step below the flagship models that cost double or triple the price. Finally, if you're looking for pure bass without a sub, these won't satisfy that craving. They're designed to complement, not replace, a subwoofer. Installation is straightforward. They're about 43 inches tall, so they